Admiral Kethra stood on the command deck of her flagship and watched the stars through the massive viewing window. She had served the Valorian Empire for 60 years. She had fought in 12 wars and commanded fleets that burned worlds to ash. Nothing surprised her anymore. At least, that was what she believed until this moment. "Admiral," her sensor officer said. His voice was shaking. "You need to see this." Kethra turned from the window and walked to the sensor station. The young officer's scales had turned pale blue, which meant he was afraid. She looked at his screen and felt her own scale shift color. "That cannot be correct," she said. "Run the scan again." "I have run it 7 times, Admiral." "The readings are accurate." On the screen was the outline of a ship. It was emerging from hyperspace at the edge of Valorian territory, in a sector that humans used for their cargo routes. But this was not a cargo ship. This was not a frigate or a destroyer. This was a battleship of enormous size, and its design was unlike anything in the Imperial database. The ship was human. The energy signature confirmed it. But humans could not build ships like this. The Empire had made certain of that. Kethra remembered the day humanity joined the Empire, 80 years ago. She had been a young officer then, stationed at the first contact outpost. The humans had arrived in ships that were primitive but functional. Their technology was at least 2 centuries behind the Valorian standard. The Empire had welcomed them as a minor member species, given them trade rights and protection, and placed careful limits on their development. Humans were allowed to build light frigates for local defense. They could construct cargo haulers for trade. Anything larger required Imperial approval, and that approval was never given. The Empire monitored human shipyards through satellite networks. They tracked human resource flows through trade agreements. They counted every ton of metal that humans mined and processed. According to every report, every audit, every inspection, humanity did not have the capability to build a battleship. They did not have the shipyards. They did not have the resources. They did not have the technology. And yet, here was a battleship, floating in space, broadcasting a human identification signal. "Open a channel," Kethra ordered. The communication officer worked his console. A moment later, a human face appeared on the main screen. The human was a male with dark skin and gray hair. He wore a uniform that Kethra did not recognize. It was not the standard merchant outfit that humans wore. It looked military, but it did not match any human military organization in the Imperial records. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun's task force," the human said. "I am Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earthship Perseverance. We are passing through this sector on our way to the neutral zone for routine exercises. We mean no harm to any Valorian vessel or installation." Kethra studied the human's face. He seemed calm and confident. He spoke as if this was perfectly normal, as if his impossible ship was nothing unusual. "Captain Webb," Kethra said carefully, "your vessel does not appear in any Imperial registry. Its design does not match any approved human construction. I must ask you to explain." The human smiled slightly. "The Perseverance is a new class of ship, Admiral. We've been testing several new designs in the outer systems. I apologize if our presence has caused concern. New designs require Imperial approval," Kethra said. "I have no record of any approval for a vessel of this size and configuration." "I understand your concern," Captain Webb replied. "I'm sure there's been some administrative delay in processing the paperwork. You know how bureaucracy can be. In the meantime, we're simply passing through. We'll be out of your patrol zone within 6 hours." Kethra wanted to order her fleet to surround the human ship. She wanted to demand a full inspection. She wanted answers. But something made her hesitate. The human battleship was alone, but it was enormous. Her sensors showed weapon systems that she could not identify. If she provoked a confrontation and the humans decided to fight, She was not certain her patrol fleet would survive. "Very well, Captain Webb," she said at last. "You may proceed. But I will be reporting this encounter to the High Council. I suggest you ensure that your paperwork is in order." "Thank you, Admiral. Safe travels." The screen went dark. Cathra watched as the human battleship moved through her patrol zone. It traveled at a speed that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. Within 4 hours, it had disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward the neutral zone. Cathra returned to her quarters and began composing her report to the High Council. She described the ship in detail. She included the sensor readings, the communication logs, and her own observations. She marked the report as highest priority and sent it through the secure military channel. Then she did something she had not done in 30 years. She accessed the Imperial Historical Archives and began searching for records of human activity. She wanted to know if anyone else had seen ships like this. What she found disturbed her deeply. The first report was from 12 years ago. A mining station in the Outer Territories had detected a large vessel passing through an empty sector. The crew had assumed it was a sensor ghost, an echo from some distant star. They had filed a brief report and forgotten about it. The second report was from 9 years ago. A scientific vessel studying a dead planet had observed what they described as an enormous shadow moving between stars. They had attributed it to a natural phenomenon, perhaps a rogue asteroid or a cloud of space dust. The third report was from 6 years ago. A merchant convoy had encountered a ship that did not respond to hails and did not appear on any registry. The convoy captain had described it as a massive vessel of unknown design. Imperial authorities had dismissed the report as a case of mistaken identification. There were 14 more reports scattered across the past decade. Each one described a large ship or ships in areas where humans operated. Each one had been dismissed, ignored, or classified as a sensor error. No one had connected them. No one had seen the pattern. Cathra saw it now. She sent a second message to the High Council. This message was even more urgent than the first. She attached all 17 reports and highlighted the pattern. Humanity was not building one battleship. They were building many. They had been building them for years, perhaps decades, in secret locations that the Empire had never discovered. The Empire had been watching humanity for 80 years. They had monitored every shipyard, every factory, every mine. They had counted every resource and tracked every construction project. And somehow, humanity had built an entire fleet of advanced warships right under their noses. Cathra did not sleep that night. She sat in her quarters and stared at the stars and wondered how this was possible. The Empire controlled the galaxy. They had conquered 1,000 species and absorbed 10,000 worlds. Their technology was the most advanced in known space. Their intelligence network was vast and thorough. How had humanity fooled them? The answer came to her slowly, and it was a terrible answer. The Empire had made assumptions about humanity. They had looked at human technology and judged it primitive. They had looked at human society and judged it simple. They had placed humans in a category and never questioned whether that category was correct. What if humanity had never been primitive? What if they had only pretended to be? Cathra thought about the first contact reports. She remembered the human ships that had seemed so crude, so far behind Valorian standards. At the time, everyone had accepted this as evidence of human backwardness. But what if those ships had been designed to look crude? What if humanity had deliberately shown the Empire exactly what the Empire expected to see? If that was true, then the Empire had been deceived from the very beginning. Everything they believed about humanity was wrong. Every assumption was flawed. Every calculation was based on false data. And if humanity could build battleships in secret, what else could they do? Cathra felt fear for the first time in decades. She was afraid for herself, for her fleet, for her empire. But she was also afraid of something else. She was afraid of what would happen when the High Council received her reports. They would react with anger and panic. They would see humanity as a threat that needed to be destroyed quickly, before it grew too strong. And if humanity truly had a hidden fleet of advanced warships, that destruction might not be possible. The Admiral stood up and walked to her window. She looked out at the stars that the Valorian Empire had ruled for 12,000 years. She wondered how many of those stars now sheltered human ships that waited in the darkness. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. The Empire had built its power on the belief that no one could challenge them. That belief had just been shattered by a single human battleship passing through a routine patrol zone. Kethra began preparing her fleet for whatever orders might come. She did not know if those orders would be for war or for peace. She only knew that the universe had become a much more dangerous place, and humanity was at the center of that danger. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, Captain Marcus Webb guided his ship toward the neutral zone. He knew that the Admiral had let him pass, but he also knew that she would report what she had seen. The secret was finally coming out. Humanity's long deception was reaching its end. The captain smiled grimly as he watched the stars stream past his window. They had the Imperial High Council chamber was the most impressive room in the galaxy. It sat at the heart of the Valorian homeworld, deep inside a mountain that had been hollowed out 10,000 years ago. The walls were carved from black stone and decorated with gold that had been taken from 100 conquered worlds. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadow. 12 thrones arranged in a circle dominated the floor, and on those thrones sat the 12 most powerful beings in known space. High Councilor Vethanar occupied the largest throne. He was ancient even by Valorian standards. His scales faded to silver with age, his eyes still sharp with intelligence. He had ruled the Empire for 3 centuries, guiding it through wars and revolutions and natural disasters. He had seen species rise and fall. He had watched empires crumble to dust. He had never felt fear like this. "Show them," he commanded. The center of the chamber flickered, and a holographic projection appeared. It showed the human battleship that Admiral Kethra had encountered. The image rotated slowly, revealing the ship from every angle. Sensor data scrolled alongside, displaying weapon systems, shield generators, engine configurations, and hull composition. The other counselors leaned forward in their thrones. Some of them hissed in surprise. Others went very still. "This ship appeared in our territory 3 days ago," Vethanar said. "It was alone. It did not attack our forces. It simply passed through and continued on its way. Admiral Kethra allowed it to leave because she feared that any attempt to stop it would result in the destruction of her patrol fleet." Councilor Drethka, who commanded the Imperial military, spoke first. "One ship is not a threat. We have thousands of warships. We can destroy this vessel easily. Can we?" Vethanar pressed a control on his throne. The hologram changed, showing a star map with dozens of red dots scattered across it. Admiral Kethra searched the historical archives. She found 17 previous sightings of similar vessels over the past 12 years. Each sighting was dismissed as a sensor error or misidentification. When analyzed together, they reveal a pattern. The counselors studied the map. The red dots were spread across the galaxy, but they clustered near areas of human activity, near human trade routes, near human colonies, near the empty sectors where humans sent their survey ships. "Humanity has been building these ships for at least 12 years, Vethanar continued. "Perhaps longer. We do not know how many they have constructed. We do not know where they are hidden. We do not know the full extent of their capabilities." Councilor Miraset, who managed economic affairs, shook her head in disbelief. This is impossible. We monitor human industry. We track their resource consumption. Their shipyards are not capable of producing vessels of this size. The numbers simply do not work. And yet the ships exist, Vethner replied. Intelligence Director Silmora rose from her throne. She was small and thin, with scales the color of deep water. Her eyes never seemed to blink. She controlled the largest spy network in the galaxy, with agents on every world and in every government. I have spent the past 3 days analyzing every piece of data we have on human industry, she said. Councilor Miracet is correct. The numbers do not work. If humanity built these ships using their known resources and infrastructure, they would need to work every human citizen continuously for decades. They would need to strip their colonies bare. They would need to consume resources that simply do not appear in our tracking systems. Then how did they do it? Drethka demanded. I do not know, Silmora admitted. The words seemed to cause her physical pain. I have never said those words before in this chamber. I do not like saying them now, but I must be honest with you. We are facing something that our intelligence cannot explain. The chamber fell silent. The 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy stared at each other with expressions of confusion and growing fear. Finally, a voice spoke from the far end of the circle. It was Torek, the youngest member of the council. He was not Valorian but Nemeth, a species that the Empire had conquered 8 centuries ago. The Nemeth had proven useful enough to be elevated to positions of minor authority, and Torek had risen faster than most. He served as a junior analyst, allowed to observe council sessions, but rarely invited to speak. Forgive my interruption, Torek said. His voice was soft but steady. I have a question that perhaps the council has not considered. Vethner looked at him with mild surprise. Speak. We have assumed that humanity was primitive when we made first contact with them. We based all our monitoring, all our restrictions, all our calculations on that assumption. But what if the assumption was wrong? What if humanity was never primitive? What if they only pretended to be? Drethka made a dismissive sound. Absurd. We saw their technology. We examined their ships. Our scientists evaluated their capabilities thoroughly. We saw what they showed us, Torek replied. We examined what they allowed us to examine. What if they deliberately presented a false picture of themselves? What if humanity understood exactly what would happen if the Empire recognized them as advanced? They would be absorbed, controlled, stripped of their innovations. They saw what happened to my people. They saw what happened to the Korath and the Velasi and all the others. Perhaps they decided that pretending to be weak was safer than revealing their true strength. The council members exchanged glances. The idea was disturbing because it made a terrible kind of sense. If that is true, Councilor Miracet said slowly, then everything we know about humanity is a lie. Every trade agreement, every inspection report, every diplomatic exchange has been based on false information. Not just false information, Silmora added. A coordinated deception that has lasted 80 years. That would require incredible discipline, incredible planning, incredible patience. She paused. It would require a level of sophistication that we never believed humans possessed. High Counselor Vethner leaned back in his throne. His ancient face showed no expression, but his mind was racing. He had conquered species that fought with passion and species that fought with cunning. He had never encountered a species that had chosen to hide for 80 years, building its strength in secret, waiting for the right moment. What kind of beings could maintain such discipline? We need more information, Vethner declared. Silmora, I want your best agents inserted into human space. I want to know where these ships are being built. I want to know how many they have. I want to know what their intentions are." "It will be done," Silmora said. Counselor Drethka stood up. His military decorations gleamed in the chamber's dim light. "We should not wait for more information. We should strike now, while we still have overwhelming numerical advantage. If humanity is truly building a secret fleet, every day we delay gives them more ships, more weapons, more strength. And if we attack and fail?" Torek asked. "If humanity's hidden fleet is larger than we expect? If their technology is more advanced than we realize? A failed attack would only confirm that we are their enemies. It would give them justification for war." "They are already our enemies," Drethka growled. "The moment they began building warships in secret, they declared themselves against us. We should respond accordingly." The debate continued for hours. Counselors argued and threatened and bargained. Some wanted immediate military action. Others wanted diplomacy. Some wanted to pretend nothing had happened and hoped the problem would resolve itself. In the end, Vethna made the decision. They would send spies into human space. They would gather intelligence. They would not attack yet, but they would prepare their fleets for war. If the spy reports confirmed their fears, they would strike humanity with overwhelming force before it was too late. The council session ended. The counselors returned to their various duties. Only Torek remained, sitting alone in the vast chamber, thinking about what he had heard. He accessed the Imperial archives through his personal terminal. He searched for the original first contact reports from 80 years ago. Most of the files were ordinary, filled with technical assessments and diplomatic protocols. But one file was different. It was sealed with the highest security classification. Even as a council analyst, Torek did not have clearance to open it. Someone had classified part of the first contact report. Someone had hidden information about humanity from the very beginning. Torek stared at the locked file for a long time. He did not know what it contained. He did not know why it had been hidden, but he knew that it mattered. Whatever secret lay buried in that file, it might hold the key to understanding what humanity truly was. He made a copy of the file's location and stored it in his personal memory device. Then he left the chamber and walked out into the busy streets of the Valorian capital. The city around him sparkled with lights and hummed with activity. Millions of beings went about their daily lives, unaware that their empire might be facing its greatest threat. They trusted in the strength of the Valorian military. They believed in the wisdom of the High Council. They had no reason to think that anything could challenge the power that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Torek knew better. He had seen the fear in the counselors' eyes. He had heard the uncertainty in their voices. For the first time since the transport ship descended through clouds that glowed orange in the setting sun. Valkyra watched through the small window as the human world called Earth grew larger beneath her. Mountains rose in the distance. A vast blue ocean stretched to the horizon. Cities spread across the landscape like clusters of glittering jewels. It looked peaceful. It looked ordinary. It looked exactly like the Imperial records described. Valkyra was one of the best agents in the Intelligence Directorate. She had spent 40 years learning to deceive, to infiltrate, to extract information from the most guarded sources. She had operated on 100 worlds, wearing 100 different identities. She had never failed a mission. This mission was different. This mission was personal. Director Silmora had selected her specifically because of her skills and her loyalty. The director believed that humanity was hiding something dangerous, and Valkyra was determined to discover what it was. Her cover identity was perfect. She was posing as a cultural exchange scholar from a neutral world, visiting Earth to study human art and literature. The humans had welcomed her warmly. They had assigned her a guide, given her access to museums and universities, and encouraged her to explore their civilization. They seemed so trusting, so open, so harmless. The transport landed at a facility outside a city called Geneva. Valkyra collected her bags and walked through the terminal. Humans moved around her, talking and laughing and living their ordinary lives. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing seemed threatening. But Valkyra had learned long ago that appearances could deceive. Her guide was waiting at the terminal exit. He was a young human male named Thomas, with brown hair and friendly eyes. He smiled as she approached and extended his hand in the human greeting ritual. "Welcome to Earth," Thomas said. "I hope your journey was comfortable." "Very comfortable," Valkyra replied, shaking his hand. Her translation implant made human speech easy to understand and produce. "I am excited to learn about your culture." Thomas drove her through the city in a small vehicle. He pointed out landmarks and explained their history. Valkyra listened politely while her trained eyes scanned everything. She noted the positions of communication towers, the patterns of vehicle traffic, the layout of industrial facilities in the distance. Everything matched the Imperial records. Human technology appeared to be exactly as primitive as expected. Their vehicles ran on simple power cells. Their buildings used basic construction methods. Their communications relied on standard electromagnetic transmission. If humanity was hiding advanced technology, they were hiding it very well. Over the following weeks, Valkyra explored Earth systematically. She visited factories that produced consumer goods. She toured power plants that generated electricity. She examined transportation networks and agricultural systems and manufacturing centers. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed limited. Everything supported the Imperial assessment that humanity was a minor species with modest capabilities. But Valkyra noticed small things that did not fit. She noticed that some factories ran 3 shifts when their official production reports showed only single-shift operations. She noticed cargo ships launching at unusual hours to destinations that were not listed in public records. She noticed workers who stopped talking when she approached and resumed when she left. She noticed that humans watched her more carefully than they pretended to. After 6 weeks on Earth, Valkyra requested permission to visit a historical museum in Switzerland. The museum was famous for preserving artifacts from human history. It would be a natural destination for a cultural scholar. Thomas agreed to take her. They drove through mountain valleys and past lakes that sparkled in the sunlight. The scenery was beautiful, but Valkyra barely noticed. Her attention was focused on the subtle signs she had learned to recognize. There were security checkpoints on the roads that seemed too sophisticated for a simple museum. There were sensors hidden in the trees that tracked their vehicles' progress. Someone was watching. Someone was careful. The museum was built into the side of a mountain. Its public exhibits showed ancient human artifacts, paintings, sculptures, documents from various periods of human history. Valkyra walked through the displays with Thomas, asking questions and taking notes like a proper scholar. But she had noticed something during her research. The museum's public area was much smaller than the total building space registered in construction records. There were floors beneath the public exhibits that did not appear on any map. That night, Valkyra slipped out of her hotel. She had spent years developing techniques for moving unseen. She crossed the dark landscape like a shadow, avoiding sensors and patrols through a combination of skill and technology. She found an entrance to the underground levels, hidden behind a maintenance building. The security was sophisticated, but she had tools that could defeat most locks and bypass most alarms. She descended into the darkness, expecting to find evidence of weapons development or hidden shipyards. What she found was something else entirely. The underground facility was vast. It stretched for kilometers beneath the mountain, level after level of chambers and corridors. But it was not a weapons factory. It was an archive, a library, a repository of knowledge that seemed to have no end. Valkyra walked through halls filled with data storage systems more advanced than anything in the Imperial database. She passed laboratories where scientists worked on technologies that her training could not identify. She saw displays showing star maps with routes and locations that the Empire had never discovered. And she saw ships. Not physical ships, but designs, plans, blueprints for vessels that made the battleship Admiral Kethra had encountered look small. Valkyra stopped in front of a holographic display showing the history of human space development. The display started with humanity's first ventures beyond their world, primitive rockets barely capable of reaching their nearest moon. Then it showed humanity's first contact with the Empire 80 years ago. And then it showed something that made Valkyra's blood run cold. The display showed humanity deliberately destroying their advanced ships before first contact. It showed them building primitive vessels to show the Empire. It showed them creating fake factories and false records and elaborate deceptions designed to make the Empire believe that humans were backward and harmless. Humanity had been more advanced than the Empire for decades before first contact. They had hidden their true capabilities because they had watched what the Empire did to advanced species. They had seen the Nemeth conquered and absorbed. They had seen the Korath stripped of their technology. They had seen a dozen civilizations lose their freedom because they were too valuable to be left independent. So humanity had chosen to appear worthless. They had played the role of primitive newcomers while secretly building their strength. For 80 years, they had waited and prepared. We wondered when you would find this place. Valkyra spun around. A human woman stood behind her, dressed in a simple uniform. She was not armed, but something in her eyes told Valkyra that weapons were unnecessary. "My name is Director Chun," the woman said. "I command human intelligence operations. We have been watching you since you arrived on Earth. Your cover was excellent, but we have had a lot of practice identifying Imperial spies." Valkyra reached for the weapon hidden in her clothing. She was fast, faster than most beings in the galaxy. But the human was faster. Before Valkyra could move, 3 humans appeared from the shadows and restrained her. "Please do not resist," Director Chen said. "We do not want to hurt you. We want to show you something." They took her deeper into the facility, to a chamber filled with screens showing images from across the galaxy. Valkyra saw worlds she recognized, worlds that had been conquered by the Empire centuries ago. She saw the conditions there, the poverty and oppression, the way subject species lived under Valorian rule. "The Empire has controlled the galaxy for 12,000 years, Director Chen said. "In that time, they have conquered hundreds of species. They have taken their resources, their technologies, their futures. They have turned free peoples into servants and called it civilization. This is how empires work," Valkyra replied. "The strong rule, the weak serve." "That is one way," Director Chen agreed. "It is not the only way. Humanity chose a different path. We built our strength in secret because we knew that open defiance would lead to our destruction. But we did not build that strength for conquest." She pressed a control and the screens changed. Now they showed designs for ships, for stations, for weapon systems. They showed military plans and strategic assessments. But they also showed something else. They showed plans for liberation. Plans for freeing the subject species of the Empire. Plans for building a galaxy where strength did not mean the right to dominate. "We've been preparing for 80 years, Director Chun said. "We have built ships and trained crews and developed technologies that the Empire cannot match. We could have used that power to destroy. We chose instead to use it to free." "Free whom?" Valkyra asked. "Everyone. Every species that the Empire has conquered. Every world that lives under Valorian domination. Every being who has been told that their only value is what they can provide to their masters. Valkyra thought about her own people, the Velshar. They had been conquered 4 centuries ago. They served High Counselor Vethner, received the emergency transmission in his private chambers. The message was simple and devastating. Contact had been lost with Agent Valkyra. Her last transmission, sent 3 days ago, had been a routine report. Then silence. The humans had found her. The humans had stopped her. The humans knew that the Empire was investigating them. Vethner called an emergency session of the High Council. When the 12 counselors assembled in their ancient chamber, he did not waste time with ceremony. "We must act now," he declared. "Humanity knows we are watching them. If we wait longer, they will prepare. They will hide. They will become even more dangerous than they already are." Counselor Drethka stood from his military throne. "I have been preparing the first fleet since our last session. 800 warships are ready to deploy. We can reach human space within 6 days and begin operations immediately." "What operations?" Torek asked from his junior position. "What exactly are we planning to do?" Drethka turned cold eyes toward the young Nemeth. "We are planning to pacify the human homeworld. We will destroy their hidden shipyards. We will eliminate their military capacity. We will remind them that the Valorian Empire does not tolerate defiance." "You mean we are planning to conquer them?" Torek said. "To do to humanity what we did to my people 8 centuries ago." "If necessary," Drethka replied. "Humanity had their chance to be peaceful members of the Empire. They chose to deceive us. They chose to build weapons in secret. They chose to become a threat. Now they will face the consequences." The council voted. 11 councilors supported military action. Only Torek voted against, and his vote carried no weight. The decision was made. 6 days later, the first fleet assembled at the edge of human space. Admiral Kethra stood on the command deck of her new flagship, the Imperial Wrath, and surveyed the forces under her command. 800 warships filled the void around her. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, support vessels. It was the largest military operation in 3 centuries. She had hoped it would not come to this. When she had let the human battleship pass through her patrol zone, she had hoped that diplomacy might resolve the situation. She had hoped that the humans would explain themselves, that there would be some reasonable explanation for their secret fleet. Now she was leading an invasion force to their homeworld. Now she would destroy their civilization if they did not surrender. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. The journey took 2 days. When they emerged in the human home system, Kethra expected to find panic. She expected to find desperate attempts at evacuation. She expected to find a terrified species facing overwhelming force. She found a fleet waiting for her. The human ships hung in formation between the First Fleet and Earth. There were only 40 vessels, a tiny fraction of the Imperial force. But as Kethra studied them, she felt the same cold fear she had felt when she first encountered the Perseverance. These ships were even larger than that one. Their designs were even more alien. Their weapon systems were unlike anything in the Imperial database. Sensor readings showed power signatures that should have been impossible. 40 ships against 800. The numbers should have guaranteed victory. Kethra no longer trusted the numbers. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "the human flagship is hailing us." A human face appeared on the main screen. It was a woman with silver hair and calm eyes. She wore an admiral's uniform covered with decorations that Kethra did not recognize. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force," the woman said. "You have entered human sovereign space with a military fleet. This is an act of war. I am required by my government to offer you one chance to withdraw peacefully. Take your ships and leave. No harm will come to you." Kethra felt her scales flush with anger. You are in no position to make demands. You have 40 ships. I have 800. Your secret is exposed. Your deception has failed. Surrender now, and your people will be treated mercifully. Admiral Chun shook her head slowly. You do not understand what you are facing. We did not spend 80 years building ships just to surrender when you finally noticed. We built them because we knew this day would come. We prepared for this moment. Leave now, or face the consequences. Consequences? Cathra gestured at the display showing her vast fleet. What consequences can 40 ships deliver against this force? Allow me to demonstrate. The screen went dark. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Cathra's tactical officer screamed a warning, and the universe exploded into chaos. The human ships moved faster than anything Cathra had ever seen. They did not fly through space in normal patterns. They seemed to jump, to teleport, to appear in one location and vanish to another. One moment they were in front of the first fleet. The next moment they were among it, weapons firing in all directions. The weapons themselves were terrifying. Gravity lances that twisted Imperial ships into twisted metal. Energy beams that cut through shields like they did not exist. Projectiles that seemed to track their targets with impossible precision. The first fleet returned fire, but their weapons could not hit ships that refused to stay in one place. Missiles locked onto targets that vanished before impact. Energy beams struck empty space where ships had been moments before. In the first hour, 200 Imperial ships were destroyed. In the second hour, another 150. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. Cathra watched the battle from her command deck and felt despair. Everything she had been told about humanity was wrong. Every assumption had been false. Every calculation had been flawed. This was not a primitive species that had managed to build a few advanced ships. This was a civilization that had hidden its true power so completely that the Empire had never suspected. Admiral, her tactical officer, reported, his voice shaking. Our remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat. Morale has collapsed. The crews are panicking. Cathra looked at the display showing the wreckage of her fleet. More than half her ships were gone. The survivors were scattered and disorganized. The human fleet moved among them like predators among prey. She had lost. The greatest military force assembled in 3 centuries had been shattered by 40 ships. All ships, she ordered, her voice heavy with defeat. Prepare to, Admiral. A communications officer interrupted. The human flagship is hailing us again. Admiral Chun's face reappeared on the screen. She looked exactly as calm as before, as if the battle had been nothing more than a training exercise. Enough have died, Chun said. Withdraw from human space, and no more will be harmed. We did not want this war. We still do not want it. Take your surviving ships and go home. Tell your council what you have seen. Tell them that humanity will defend itself against any attack, but we have no desire for conquest. We seek only to be left in peace. Cathra stared at the human admiral. In all her decades of service, she had never been offered mercy by a defeated enemy. She had certainly never been offered mercy by a victorious one. Why? She asked. You could destroy us all. Why stop? Because we are not you, Chun replied. We do not measure strength by how many we can kill. We measure it by how many we can protect. Today we protected our world. That is enough. Cathra made her decision. It was the hardest decision of her life, but it was also the easiest. All ships, she commanded, stand down. Prepare to withdraw. Her officers stared at her in shock. Surrender was unthinkable. Retreat was shameful. But Cathra had seen something today that changed everything she believed about war and power and civilization. She had seen a species that could destroy her completely and chose not to. The surviving Imperial ships gathered into formation and prepared to leave human space. Before they departed, Kethra opened one final channel to the human flagship. "Admiral Chun," she said, "I will return to the Empire and report what happened here. I will tell them the truth. Your fleet is more powerful than anything we possess. Your technology is beyond our understanding. But I will also tell them something else. What is that? I will tell them that when you had the chance to destroy us, you showed mercy. I do not know what that means for the future, but I know it means something." Chun nodded slowly. "It means that we are what we have always claimed to be. Not conquerors, not destroyers, just people who want to live in peace." The channel closed. The Imperial fleet retreated. Kethra watched human space shrink behind her and wondered what would happen next. The Empire had sent its greatest fleet to crush humanity and had been utterly defeated. The news would spread. Subject species would hear about it. They would learn that the Empire could be beaten. They would start to wonder if they, too, could be free. Everything was about to change. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chun stood on her command deck and watched the Imperial fleet retreat. Around her, officers celebrated their victory. They had done the impossible. They had defended their world against overwhelming force. But Chun did not celebrate. She looked at the casualty reports from her own fleet. No ships had been lost, but there had been injuries. There had been close calls. And she knew that this was only the beginning. She walked to the observation window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Imperial High Council was. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Human Space. The galaxy had not stopped talking about it. News spread through every communication channel, every trade route, every whispered conversation in hidden corners of occupied worlds. The Valorian Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 12,000 years, had sent its greatest fleet against humanity and had been utterly destroyed. 800 warships against 40, and the humans had not lost a single vessel. The subject species of the Empire heard the news and began to dream of things they had not dared to dream in centuries. They began to wonder if freedom was possible. They began to hope. On the Valorian homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session after emergency session. High Counselor Vethner looked older than ever, his silver scales dull with exhaustion and stress. The defeat had shaken everything he believed about power and dominance. "We cannot let this stand," Counselor Drethka insisted for the 100th time. "We must rebuild our fleets. We must develop new weapons. We must show the galaxy that the Empire remains strong." "And how do you propose we do that?" Counselor Miraset demanded. "Our industrial capacity is already stretched to its limits. Rebuilding the first fleet alone will take decades. Developing technology to match the humans could take centuries. Then we buy time," Drethka replied. "We negotiate. We delay. We tell the humans whatever they want to hear while we prepare for the next battle." Torek stood from his position at the edge of the chamber. Over the past 6 months, his status had changed. His prediction about humanity had proven correct. His warnings had been ignored, and the Empire had paid the price. Now the other counselors listened when he spoke. "That strategy will not work," Torek said. "Humanity has proven they can see through our deceptions. They hid their true capabilities from us for 80 years. Do you really believe we can deceive them now? Then what do you suggest?" Vethner asked wearily. "I suggest we consider doing something the Empire has never done in 12,000 years. I suggest we consider changing." The chamber fell silent. The counselors stared at Torek as if he had lost his mind. "The Empire exists because we are strong," Torek continued. "We conquered because we could. We dominated because no one could stop us. But that has changed. Humanity can stop us. If we try to rebuild our military and challenge them again, they will destroy us completely. The only question is whether the Empire ends in fire or transforms into something new. What kind of transformation? Vethaner asked. His voice was tired, but there was something else in it. Something that might have been curiosity. Humanity has sent us a message, Torek replied. Not just through their military victory, but through their mercy afterward. They could have pursued our fleeing ships. They could have invaded our worlds. They could have done to us what we have done to so many others. Instead, they let us go. They asked only to be left in peace. You believe their claims of peaceful intention? Drethka scoffed. I believe that a species which shows mercy to a defeated enemy is fundamentally different from one that does not. Torek answered. I believe humanity when they say they do not want to conquer us. But I also believe they will destroy us if we force them to. The debate continued for hours. It continued for days. It continued for weeks as the Empire tried to decide what to do about a problem that had no military solution. While the Council argued, something else was happening. Ambassador James Okonkwo arrived at the Valorian homeworld. The ambassador was an older human with dark skin and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes rather than elaborate diplomatic robes. He spoke softly rather than making grand declarations. He seemed, to Valorian eyes, almost insignificant. But he carried a message that would change everything. The High Council agreed to meet with him, though some councilors wanted to arrest him as a spy or an enemy agent. Okonkwo stood alone in the Great Chamber, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, and showed no fear. I am here to offer humanity's terms for peace, he said. Not the terms of a conqueror to the conquered. The terms of equals who wish to build something better. We are not equals, Drethka growled. You defeated our fleet. You are the stronger. Yes, Okonkwo agreed. We are stronger. And that is exactly why these terms are not about conquest. Any species can dominate when it has power. It takes wisdom to use power for something other than domination. He pressed a control on a small device, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a vision of the galaxy unlike anything the councilors had ever imagined. Humanity proposes the dissolution of the Valorian Empire as a political entity. In its place, we propose the creation of a galactic assembly where every species has equal representation. Valorians would have one vote. Humans would have one vote. The Neneth, the Karth, the Velshar, every species that currently lives under Valorian rule would have one vote. That is madness, Miraset said. We have ruled for 12,000 years. You are asking us to surrender everything. I am asking you to transform, Okonkwo replied. The Empire was built on the idea that strength gives the right to dominate. We are offering a different idea. That strength gives the responsibility to protect. He turned to look at each counselor in turn. Humanity spent 80 years hiding our true capabilities because we feared what the Empire would do if it knew. We built our fleet not for conquest, but for defense. We prepared for this moment not because we wanted power, but because we wanted freedom. Now we have power. More than we ever expected. More than any species should have. And we face a choice. We can use that power to become a new empire, to dominate as you have dominated, to conquer as you have conquered. Or we can use it to build something that has never existed before. A galaxy where no species rules over another, where disputes are settled through discussion rather than destruction, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. The chamber was silent. The counselors looked at each other with expressions of confusion, anger, fear, and something that might have been hope. Why should we trust you? Vethaner finally asked. You deceived us for 80 years. How do we know this is not another deception? Okonkwo smiled sadly. We deceived you because we had no choice. Reveal our true strength, and you would have destroyed us. hide it, and we had a chance to survive. Now the situation has changed. You cannot destroy us. We have no need to deceive you anymore." He paused. "But you are right to be cautious. Trust must be earned, not given. So I offer you this. Humanity will share its technology with the Assembly. Not just weapons, but everything. Medicine, agriculture, energy, transportation. The advances we have made over the past century will be available to all species equally. A species with advanced technology sharing it freely?" Drethka shook his head. "That has never happened in galactic history." "Then perhaps it is time for something new in galactic history," Okonkwo replied. The council debated for 3 more weeks. Some councilors wanted to reject humanity's offer and fight to the last ship. Others wanted to accept immediately. Most fell somewhere in between, uncertain and afraid. In the end, it was Admiral Kethra who cast the deciding vote. She had been called to testify about her defeat, to explain how 40 ships had destroyed her fleet of 800. She had told the truth. She had described the battle in detail, and she had shared her final conversation with Admiral Chun. "I have spent 60 years fighting for the Empire," Kethra said. "I believed in our strength. I believed in our right to rule. Then I saw what humanity could do. I saw their power. But more importantly, I saw their choice. They could have killed us all. They stopped. They let us go. They showed mercy." She looked around the chamber at her fellow Valorians. "In 60 years of war, I have never seen mercy from a victorious enemy. Not once. That tells me something about humanity that no amount of military analysis can explain. They are different. Perhaps different enough to build the future they describe." Kethra cast her vote for acceptance. Others followed. By the narrowest margin, the High Council agreed to humanity's terms. 1 year later, the first session of the Galactic Assembly convened. Representatives from every species in the former empire gathered in a great hall built for the occasion. Humans sat beside Valorians. Nemeth sat beside Korath. Species that had been enemies for centuries now shared tables as equals. Ambassador Okonkwo took his seat in the human delegation. Across the hall, he saw Torek, now representing the free Nemeth people. The young analyst who had first guessed humanity's secret caught his eye and nodded. There was still much work to do. The galaxy would not transform overnight. Old hatreds would linger. Old fears would persist. The transition from empire to assembly would be difficult and sometimes violent. But something had changed. Something fundamental. For the first time in recorded history, strength was not being used to dominate. It was being used to liberate. Humanity had built its secret fleet for 80 years, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Now that war was over, and a new era had begun. The ships that could have conquered the galaxy had been used to free it instead. And in the great hall of the Galactic Assembly, representatives of 100 species began the long work of building something better. Not an empire of fear, but a community of hope.